Welcome. How's everybody doing tonight? Man, I don't believe y'all at all. How's everybody doing tonight? Everybody doing good? All right, there we go. Well, glad that you're here at the Collective. You could have been anywhere on a Tuesday night, but you chose to be here with us. And so for that, we are extremely grateful. And we pray that by the time you leave, this is a benefit to you, not only to your person, but to your soul, and helps you in your journey as you begin to pursue Christ. Last week we did not meet because there was a hurricane in town. I know for some people it was pretty bad, but for us and here around the church, we were pretty unaffected. And so we do apologize for that. We decided just to take safety precautions and measures and decided to go ahead and say, hey, you know what? Let's just take a week off just to be safe and just to be sure. And we're back and we're super excited to continue on and march on with this cancel culture series. So, one of the things that our ministry does, the Collective does, is that we like to share the message of Jesus Christ all around the world. And so we have actually gone to different countries. And one of the countries we have gone to is Japan. My good friend is a missionary there. His name is Butch Booth. And one of the things that Butch did for us is he set up a scavenger hunt. And it's mostly for us to learn the railroad, the train system. Everything is done through public transit. Everybody rides the trains. And so what he decided to do for our first week there was to kind of pair us up. It was kind of typically we were trying our hardest to find an experienced person with a person that had no experience at all in Japan or anything like that. Gave us a list of words, of different stations, and our goal was to kind of work our way all the way through that and get to all these different points. Well, I was teamed up with a person who had never been, and they gave us these words, and some of these I already kind of knew, so it was kind of cheating, and so we would go to these specific locations and these specific places, right? And they were really easy to find, and we did the tourist thing and take pictures next to it, right? And things like that. But there was a couple of them that I didn't know, cities that I had not been in or anything like that. And so I do the whole entire Google, translate thing, punch it in, and it says strawberry. I'm like, strawberry, like I go to a specific town and take a picture of a strawberry. So I'm looking around for giant strawberries or things like that. And Japan's known for, having this elaborate food. And so one strawberry can cost $200, $300 sometimes. And so maybe we need to go to the grocery store and just start looking for expensive strawberries. And so we're doing all this. I'm like, okay, cannot find the strawberry. There's another town that we went, and the word, when we began to put into Google Translate and everything like that, it said window. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And we're walking, I see this building, it looked like a whole bunch of windows, maybe it's that building. And we go in, do the tourist thing, right, in the building, we do all that number, and then we walk out, and as we're walking out, okay, cool, now on to the next stop, we see another building full of windows. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Well, we began to punch it into Google Maps, the town, and me kind of cheating a little bit, what is this town known for? I began to realize we weren't translating a couple of these words correctly. One was actually this giant spider that we went in and say, oh, this is what we're supposed to take pictures of, not this window. Instead of taking a picture of the strawberry, we're supposed to take a picture of this giant kind of mural with a whole bunch of different anime characters and things like that. That's what we're supposed to take pictures of. And I share that because for us, not translating something correctly ended us up in a different location. And trust me, when we saw the giant spider, that was way more fulfilling and better take pictures under than a random building with a whole bunch of windows. Holding up a strawberry, a package of strawberries, right, did not live up to going by this mural and taking a picture next to it. And I share that because I think many times in the passage that we're going to talk about tonight, we don't translate it correctly. And it ends up, for many of us, leaving us lost, leaving us actually not doing the correct thing or doing the right thing. And the passage that we're going to tackle tonight is found in Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. If you've even been around a church at some point, you've heard this verse. Judge not that you not be judged, for with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And the measure you will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and then there's the little log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. And I truly believe as we're trying to tackle this idea of cancel culture, God has given us instructions. But without proper understanding of these instructions, it can leave us very lost, maybe even letting certain things pass that are not necessarily biblical. When it comes to this idea of judging, you'll have people be way too harsh, or other people that be way too lenient. And especially with cancel culture today, like we want to be able to define, because this verse gets thrown out a lot on social media when it comes to all this. So with cancel culture being so prominent and many people claiming that people are judging, tonight we want to discuss judging, critiquing, so we can navigate our world and where God wants us to land when it comes to this idea of judging. So to begin, we're really gonna break down this passage, and we're gonna really look at 3 different types of people. There's 3 different types of people that he describes in this passage. The first person he describes is the person who judges, the judge. The second he will describe is the hypocrite. And usually if you're a judge, you're a hypocrite. And if you're a hypocrite, you're a judge. But then the third person he describes is a sibling. So cancel culture is, again, nothing new. As human beings, we have done some type of cancel culture historically, whether it be tying somebody up and throwing tomatoes at them, right? And whether it be embarrassing them, whether we put in a giant A, whatever the thing was, we've done as human beings historically, put somebody up and publicly shamed them. But what's new about cancel culture is this idea of social media that just goes a whole lot faster, makes this thing happen a whole lot quicker. And here's the issue. It's trying to force change and make change happen like we talked about last week, but it really doesn't change the person. It's just behavior modification. All it is behavior modification. So if we ultimately see somebody and maybe they post something maybe racist or something hateful or something not good, and we all come together and say, hey, this person's awful, this person's bad, and we get this person fired, is it really gonna change them right away, right then and there? More than likely, no. What it's doing is just trying to modify their behavior. Behave this way, act this way, but it never deals with the internal, never deals with the person himself. It never really brings true, authentic change. And we want to get to the point where we can actually see true, authentic change in people's lives. So as we continue to see, and we talked about last week, people are messy, but we need people. We need to do life with people. And the Sermon on the Mount is just this beautiful kind of sermon that Jesus presents. It talks about our relationship with God, that we can see him as a father, that we can interact with him. But on top of that, he talks about how we can engage with people and interact with people. And there's a way that we can go ahead and bring situations up and concerns to really truly help other people. So as we begin to dive in, Judges 1 through 2, if you have your Bible, open them up. We'd love for you to do that. It's also gonna be on the screen. Use an app or something like that. But we're really gonna start off with the judge. And that's the first kind of verb that he uses, judge not, so that you may not be judged. One of the most misunderstood Bible verses out there. We really don't truly understand it. Mo even asked me as we were talking about this idea, Mo says, all right, Sly, all right, you're gonna teach on it. Tell me what this passage means. I was like, Jared, could Jared teach this week? Like, right, I don't really want to teach. Many people have heard this, like, quit judging me. Or man, all they do is judge. Or people use it to say, to kind of give them permission to go ahead and judge. But one of the things that I really loved about my Bible college, my biblical studies professor when I went to Bible college was this. He would always say this. He would always tell students, when we look at the Bible and we study the Bible and trying to get to the verse, if there's 100 verses that talk about one specific topic, and there's 99 that communicate one thing, and one verse that seems to communicate something different, do we allow the one to communicate and kind of define the 99, or do we let the 99 define the one verse? And he would always say, hey, we let the 99 define the one verse. Because God is not changing. God is not gonna give out mixed messages. So we need to study his word to begin to see what is he trying to say. In James chapter 4, right? He'll begin to clarify what it is. Many people will say, hey, Jesus is trying to remove the legal system. He's trying to remove the law that no one, if you got arrested, right, for speeding, doing 100 down on Highway 59, right, and you get arrested and you go to a judge, like this passage is not saying, hey, remove the judge. Like that shouldn't be for you. Also, on top of that, he's not saying that we shouldn't critique, but this is what he's going to tell us in James chapter 4. This is Jesus' brother. This is James. He comes to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior later on in his life. And he says this, do not speak evil against one another, brothers. The one who speaks against a brother or judges his brother speaks evil against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you're not a doer of the law, but a judge. He quickly equates right here judging to speaking evil. Judging to speaking evil. But here's the thing, he's not talking about actions when he's talking about this idea of speaking evil, but of others. See, the Sermon on the Mount, where this kind of passage comes from, the Sermon on the Mount tries to challenge you to question yourself. The Sermon on the Mount, as you begin to kind of read, it wants you to begin to focus on the inside. Because we as human beings are so kind of wrapped up on this idea that, hey, whatever I do on the outside is what's important. What people see, what I display to the whole entire world is what matters. But what we're going to ignore is who I am as a person, who I truly am. The Sermon on the Mount breaks all that down. And judging, right, is this outward to express this kind of moral superiority. I'm better than you. And let me tell you how, and let me show you how. Because we, as most of the times, as people, we want to be better than others. Is that not cancel culture? That is not the culture that we live in. Everything we begin to see, it begins to criticize and do wrong. And who cares what the person is going through? We begin to speak evil about the other person. I remember during Snowpocalypse 2020, right? Our power went out and we lost power about 18 hours. I know some people lost it for days. We lost it about 18 hours. And so when we lost power for that amount of time, and I know short compared to some of y'all went days, we had people, I'll do the thing that they're supposed to do when your power goes out. You roll out your generator from your garage, you gas it up, right? And you power it on. We had some people in our neighborhood, like, right, I'm the dad, right? I'm married, I'm the husband, and so we do the Facebook thing, right? And we're part of our neighborhood Facebook group, right? To see who's stealing or who's egging whose houses and things like that, right? Like we're just kind of nosy, trying to figure out what's going on. And we had one guy, he said, man, some of y'all guys can't tough it out. Some of y'all have to get these generators disrupting my sleep. How dare y'all? We had some people just real quick, jump back and say like, wait a minute, like, excuse me, sir, like, who are you? If I want to run my generator, I'm going to run my generator. If I want to do this thing, I'm going to go ahead and do this thing. Like, who are you to tell me, thank you, Mo. Who are you to tell me what I should and shouldn't do? But then we had some other people jump onto that comment and said, hey, my dad has breathing issues and he's hooked up to an oxygen tank. Because if he does not have that and he can't breathe, he can die in his sleep. Another person said, hey, my wife is currently going through chemotherapy and like she can't warm herself. So this allows us to power up the space heater and the heated blanket so she can be warm. And we had a lot of other people just give real, legitimate, valid reasons. This guy judged them, having no idea what they were going through. Judging is speaking evil. Why? Because it's pride. It's pride. It's that I'm better than you. Satan, when you begin to read the beginning of the fall of Satan, you begin to see that he wanted to elevate himself and put himself at the level of God. He said, I can do a better job than God can. And what happens? He gets sent down. And everything that we interact with and everything that we see, we're being trained to ultimately hate on other people, to feel righteousness. And if you grew up in the church, some of y'all feel like this is your duty. Like you're a good Christian just to point out how bad individuals are. And we point the wrong. We feel the righteousness, but there's no self-reflection. You don't look at yourself and you make and make the hard life choices that you need to make. Instead, you say the things that you need to say, because why? It makes you feel good. And what he says is that, what Jesus says here is that you will be judged in verse 2. With the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. He's saying this. He's saying that ultimately, you will be judged the same way, with the same harshness. Again, we can't get into details why tonight, but Romans 2 will actually break it down a little bit more. He'll say, hey, it's because you know better. You know the laws and you know better, and that's why you're gonna be judged, right? Like when my 2-year-old son does something dumb, like, right, part of it is like he's just 2-year-old. He doesn't understand anything. But when my 5-year-old does something dumb and does the exact same thing, she knows better. And that's exactly what he's trying to say. God is the ultimate judge. God knows the reasons why they're doing the things that they're doing, why they're struggling, why they do what they do. We don't. The point that Jesus is trying to make is that we make horrible, horrible judges. Not only because we don't know all the details, we don't know everything going on, but ultimately as well as because we're not generous. We're not kind when other people are going through their mistakes. And without realizing it, we're in the same boat. The image that Jesus is trying to give is like, it's a court case, right? I don't know how many of y'all been to court. Don't ask me why I know these things, right? That's pre-Jesus, right? Pre-Sly, right? But sometimes you end up in court, right? And you're there waiting your turn to be seen by the judge. You'll see some people handcuffed and things like that. And so the image that Jesus is trying to give is like, hey, you're handcuffed and you're waiting your turn to be judged. And there's maybe 10, 15, 20 people in front of you. And they are being judged by the great judge. And you're like, hey, judge, hey, that person you're judging right now, like, hey, have you checked their Instagram lately? Have you checked out their stories? Yo, they have some TikToks that are like, kind of questionable. Hey, judge, man, I want you to know, like, have you checked this person's criminal background record? Like, they don't pass the test really well. Hey, Jesus, have you considered Brown versus Williams, right? Like the last person who did that got 10 years, right? Like, so what about like, literally you are kind of singing Kanye West, like someone's going to jail tonight. Like you are determined to send some people to jail while you're handcuffed. While you're handcuffed, you're just as guilty. One, you're not helping the judge. He does not need your help. And then two, you're trying to be the judge while you have your handcuffs on. Reason you can't judge is because you're not God and you're guilty. Cancel culture judges and has become who we are. It's part of us. It's so easy to do that, so easy to criticize. It's so easy to destroy instead of build up. And what Jesus is saying here is like, hey, my people, we're not gonna destroy, we're gonna build. And I'm not saying we can't call out bad behavior. We're actually gonna get to that here in a bit. But we destroy the person. We destroy the person time and time again. And what we need to be doing is destroying the sin. We need to destroy the action that they're doing. And so many times we get this identity thing messed up and we think what a person does is who they are. And it's not the case. So what we are called to do is to stop judging. The Sermon on the Mount is a sermon that Jesus is telling his disciples. Prior to this, he'll tell them, hey, listen, you are salt and light. He tells them, hey, what type of people they are. And the type of the people they are people that stand out completely different from everybody else. So that when you see a person, you're like, there's something different about them. So for us, as Christians, we need to stop judging. Then the second person he begins to talk about is the hypocrite. And he does it by this weird analogy, right? Jesus has jokes for days, right? He's no Dave Chappelle, he's no Trey Kennedy, right? So for many of us, this is kind of missed and we don't really understand it, but what he's beginning to describe is that you have one guy who has just like a little piece of dirt in his eye. Just one little piece of dirt. And then this other guy, he has this giant 2x4. Technically, when you translate the word, it's this idea of a beam that can hold up the roof of a house. And so you have this one guy with this giant beam kind of hanging out of his eye, and he's just kind of walking along and he's like, oh, hey, that person has something in their eye. Let me go out there and try to help them get it out. And so you could see this guy with this giant beam, like, hey, let me, come here. Like, no, like get on this side, like duck under. Like, okay, cool, duck under, and like, come here, right? The depth perception's all wrong, right? Like they can't get it. And like, okay, come here, okay, cool, come here. Like, let me help you take this thing out. There, you got it, like go about your day. Like dude was aiming for the trees and missed the whole entire forest. No pun intended. Like this is the idea that he's beginning to share, is that for many of us, we're too busy trying to focus on the little small things that's bothering somebody or somebody's dealing with, forgetting the fact that we have a giant log coming out of our eye. John Stott, who's a famous theologian, he said this: we have a fatal tendency to exaggerate the faults of others and minimize the gravity of our own. We seem to find it impossible when comparing ourselves with others to be strictly objective and impartial. On the contrary, we have this rosy view of ourselves and a jaundiced view of others. Indeed, what we often